What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, Hall of Fame safety Steve Atwater joins the show. We'll take a look back at Sunday's win over the Chargers and look ahead to the Broncos season finale. All that and more coming up. Joining me here in the Broncos podcast studio for today's episode of Broncos Now is Hall of Fame safety Steve Atwater. Steve, thanks for joining me today. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, Sid. Happy New Year to you.
Absolutely.
Brought in the New Year correctly.
We rung in the New Year with a win.
Yes.
Love to see it. Steve, we got the win at home for the final home game of the season. You know, looking at the whole year overall, I mean, the Broncos, they played pretty decent at home this year too. Ended their home slate with a winning record there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think was important to Sean Payton. It's one of the things that are important to the owners, and I believe the players too. Our fans are the greatest fans, and to not perform your best in front of them, where they're here cheering loud, making it difficult for the other team's offense. Giving other teams a bunch of crap. You got to go out and perform for them, and they did that this year much better. We didn't make the playoffs. We're not in the playoffs, but I think if we're able to finish this season with the winning record, I think that'll go a long way towards letting Broncos country know that we're on our way back.
I think so too. Well, Steve, looking at this last game for a little bit versus the Chargers, just what were your impressions of quarterback Jarrett Stidham? He got his first NFL career win, obviously first start as a Bronco. What did you think about his performance?
Yeah, it was kind of what I expected. It was a really good game. It wasn't a, 400-yard passing game,
right.
But I don't know that this offense, I don't know if any quarterback would have gotten that many passing yards, at this point right now. But he did a great job of executing the play, stepping up in the pocket, throwing passes on time. A little early on, I think there were some jitters, and that's to be expected. There was a lot of pressure going out there. Being the quarterback that's stepping in for Russell Wilson, who's
right.
had a Hall of Fame type career, and so I thought he stepped up and really did a nice job, especially given the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. And head coach Sean Payton, he, talked about him after the game and said that he looked really poised out there. He looked calm. He was collected, looked confident. And a lot of the players in the locker room said that after the game too.
Yeah, I heard a lot of the comments, and, that has to feel good for him to have the support of his teammates. And even Russell Wilson, man, I got to say he's handled this like a champ. And I would expect him to do that. When I was in a similar situation my last year, I was being pulled off the field on third downs, and but I still wanted to win. I still supported our younger players who were coming in and playing, and I think help with their development. So it's vital that he continues to have that great attitude and continue to support however he can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, looking at the defense from Sunday, I mean, they kept the Chargers out of the end zone, allowed just 3 field goals. What did you like about what they were able to do?
Yeah, they came out with that fight, and most of the games we've seen that. A few games they left it in the locker room, and they didn't come out with that fire, but that fire was in them, and I'm just hoping that they're going to come out this final game against the Raiders, and that's going to be really telling for a lot of people, for me, for the coaches, for Broncos country, how we show up against the Raiders, because the Raiders have had our number for the last several years. Yeah. Josh Jacobs has kind of had our number.
It's true.
We got to come out and show up and be super physical. Yes, we did it against the Chargers. We normally do it against the Chargers, so it's not a surprise that we got this win against the Chargers. But I want to see them do that same thing, come up with that same fire against the Raiders. Let Broncos country end the season on a positive note and with good feelings. So that's what I'm hoping happens.
Yeah. We'll see before we get into this last game. It being the final week here of the regular season, we got to do our player focus. We got to finish off this podcast with it. So who's the one guy this week that you just want to highlight?
Well, I would say Jonathan Cooper. He's had a really solid year, heck of a guy, heck of a teammate. I've loved his effort ever since he's gotten here. And, it really couldn't happen to a nicer guy, just a professional. He's a professional in every sense of the word.
Yes.
I respect his game. He's gotten some attention from a lot of the offensive players by the way that he plays the game. Just, physical, nonstop. He's coming at you, for 60 minutes out of the game, and I really love that, and I really respect his game.
Yeah, he has 8.5 sacks on the year. That's it. He leads the team in sacks, and obviously a career high for him as well. So he has had a good year. Steve, looking at this final game of the season, I mean, that's the last week of the regular season here.
Man,
I can't even believe it.
It's going by too fast.
It goes by so fast.
Yes.
It always goes by so fast. I mean, if you think back, looking back at this season, I mean, you think to when this team started 1-5, how far they've come this year has been really incredible. We all expected a turnaround, but I don't know that anyone expected it to be this quick.
Yes, and especially where we had that run in the middle of the season. Was it 5 games straight?
5
games
straight.
Streak. And, that gave us a glimpse of what this team could be like when we were hitting on all cylinders. And I think that's a recipe for what we're going to be like next year and the years to come. So I was happy for that period of time, and hopefully we can, again, finish it off on a positive note against the Raiders. We lost to them earlier in the season. Got to get them back. And we don't like the Raiders anyway.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Steve, as this team sits at 8-8 now, and like you said, they'll look to finish the season strong versus the Raiders. How important is it to get this 9th win, to finish the year with a winning record for the players?
I've always felt like, how you finish is extremely important. And, I know some people say, oh, yeah, it has nothing to do with next year. But I think if you can finish the season with some momentum, 2 wins, first winning season in a few years.
Since 2016.
Since 2016. Yes, it's a lot of years.
A lot of years, yeah.
I think that goes a long way towards people coming back with the right attitude next year, and that optimism that, hey, we did something special last year. It wasn't what we wanted. We wanted to be in the playoffs. We wanted to be contending for the Super Bowl. Right. But if we can't get that, let's get the next best thing. And next year, that will be our goal, to make sure we're in the playoffs and in the hunt late in the season.
Yeah, Steve, you talk about that momentum just heading into the offseason. Can you kind of talk about that a bit more? What is finishing the season, with a winning record, finishing the season with a win versus a division opponent? What does that mean for the offseason as the players, try and continue that momentum?
Yeah, well, one, I think it makes it to where this is an appealing destination for free agents, guys who aren't going to be playing with the teams that they're with now. Also, just again, the mentality of our players, knowing that, hey, Sean Payton came in 1 year and kind of turned it around, and we're on the right track. We're going to be running the same offense, same defense. I'm getting more familiar with it. Guys don't want to keep changing offenses and defenses and special teams. They want to have some things the same.
Which this team has seen a lot of.
We've seen
in recent years a lot of change.
Way too much. And Sean Payton is he's going to be a steady force here and a staple. And I think that's appealing to players.
Well, Steve, looking at this last game of the season then in Las Vegas versus the Raiders, I mean, what have you just seen from the Raiders recently? I mean, it's not going to be an easy one to finish the year.
Hey, they're playing for Coach Pierce, Antonio Pierce. I don't know. They love this guy, and they're going out there. They're landing on the line. Although they lost to the Indianapolis Colts, I watched some of that game. The Raiders, they play hard. They played like they wanted to win. Yeah. And the Colts made some great plays. I was like, man, this they made some plays offensively down the stretch. Some amazing plays, amazing throws and catches that you don't see from some of the backup quarterbacks in this league. Right. But they've been playing well, and but the Raiders they fought hard, and I know that this is going to be a tough game. This is not going to be an easy game for the Broncos to win. So they got to have their mindset that, hey, we got one more to go. And let's get our minds right to go to battle. Let's get our bodies right. Let's be ready to finish this season off strongly.
Yeah, I mean, both teams, they've been eliminated from the playoffs. Like you said, the Raiders are playing for their interim head coach, Antonio Pierce. What do you feel like a lot of this team here in Denver, Steve, what are they playing for in this final game?
Well, I would say that they're playing for, I don't want to sound selfish, but they're playing for themselves, and they're playing for pride. And I think that Broncos country, when they see players out and about, they love to say hello. They love to interact with the players, but it feels much better when you're winning and when the effort is, they can see the effort on the field. Yeah. So, you want to leave everybody with a good taste in their mouths, and you want to leave yourself with a good taste in your mouth, because some of the players won't be back. Every year the team changes, and
the industry.
Players leave for whatever reason, whether it's contract, whether it's the contract is up, whether they get released or whatever. So guys are also playing for other teams because, hey,
putting tape out there.
The effort, the effort that you put on tape, they're looking at. And if you go out and they see that, hey, the game really, it wasn't for playoff ramifications, but you didn't give it your all, they may say, hey, I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass on it. I don't want that person in my locker room affecting the rest of my players. So, and I think that's always the case. Whenever you're on the field, man, you gotta be 110% out there. You got to be all in, effort-wise, mentally, physically, spiritually, the whole 9 yards. You got to be in, and hopefully, all of our guys show up and they present that on Sunday.
Yeah, still love to play for, Steve. Can't thank you enough for joining me today and for this whole season. I'm going to miss having you on the podcast every single week.
Oh, thank you, Sid. Hey, we'll do it again.
We will.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Steve, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Sid.
Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode.